We're going to win, aren't we?
We're absolutely going to win.
All agreed. All agreed.
We've been told that on the doorstep we're going to win.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
Jeremy.
How you doing? You're all right.
I am now, I've met you.
Lovely to see
Do you think we're going to do it? I do. Lovely.
Fantastic.
Determination.
Yeah, we're doing 5 events today and about another 30 in the next 4 days.
Well done.
There is no part of the country we'll not be in.
Thank you very much.
And can I apologise on behalf of our school for the result against Lincoln? or shall I just say nothing more? Or shall I say nothing more about that? Were any of you at the game? Lincoln were fantastic.
Oh, fantastic.
Just say something. My dad used to say you could tell a person by his handshake, and that's a firm handshake.
Okay. All right, I'll go with that. That's all right. You've got a very wise woman here.
Oh, miner's wife, miner's daughter, saying nothing else. Labour through and through. Runs through my veins.
Absolutely, brilliant. Oh, thanks for being here.
No, I got to. I didn't know. I'd come shopping and.
Then I turn up.
Yeah. Wow.
So a crazy lady with a
Can you
poster.
get me some cat food and I'll take it out with me? Thank you for everything you're doing. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. We had a good time in New York yesterday. It was all right.
Oh, lovely.
Thanks. See you later, okay? All right, thanks.
Bye.
Well done,
You remembered me, won't you?
All right.
Geraldine.
Geraldine. SMG, by the way. That's all about 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday the 9th, I reckon, something like that.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for coming today. And thank you to all of you who've been coming out on the campaign trail. It is going amazingly well. We're getting a brilliant response from your to me and to Joe. We're here today to talk about people pensions, I believe. So if anybody's got questions, Jeremy's going to queue up.
What would be nice is if I just say literally minutes and then chat and questions. Is that all right? As far as I'm concerned, what is happening to the pensioners and the threats that are there at the moment are absolutely awful. One is the triple lock is obviously very important. When I was first elected in 1983, I then introduced a private members' bill to Parliament to abolish standing charge and guarantee pension rights to go up in line with either
One, two.
So eventually got the eventually which is to raise the pension in line with RPI, retail price index, consumer price index, or average earning of 2.5% generally high. And that's good. And we absolutely guarantee to maintain that. The Conservative manifesto does not. It's silent on the subject, and I'm very disappointed the Prime Minister wasn't able to attend any of the 3 debates with me this week. It's very strange when somebody's in the same building as you and is unable to come out of their room in order to come and have a chat, because I'm ever so polite. I haven't got a problem, I can talk to anybody. Anyway, so there's no guarantee on that. Second one is on social care and how that is to be dealt with. There's, as you all know, a crisis of social care at the moment in Britain. There's more than 1 million people not getting the social care they need. There are many who are getting care at home, which is often inadequate. There's not enough hours of the visits taking place. And thirdly, is how it's going to be paid for in the future. The government has said it would put, well, they've changed their mind several times on how much of the value of their house they would take on it. The last figure was 100,000, but what we're saying is that this is not a proper or fair system. We should be recognising that social care is really the lottery of life. Look at it this way. If one of us got cancer and we went into hospital to be treated, we would be supported, we would be treated, we might be in hospital quite a long time, we'd come home, we might get district nursing care and so on when we come home. Fine, no problem with any of that. And you wouldn't pay for it because it's part of your right within the National Health Service. However, if one of us got dementia, which is not necessarily a hospital condition, but nevertheless needs enormous levels of care and support, then essentially, under the Conservative plan, £100,000 of your assets would go towards paying for it. And that can be very unfair. If you say £100,000 from somebody who's got a house worth £200,000, that's 50% of that. If they've got a house worth £2 million, it's a tiny percentage. It's not fair. So what we're saying is that we will put, and it's fully costed, £2 billion every year for the next Parliament into social care to fund the gap that's there at the moment and deal with the crisis of the waiting list, and have a national care service that includes issues of care at home as well as care in homes and institutions. If we don't do something about this, then in reality what happens is members of families have to give up their jobs in order to care for somebody who needs help. It might be an older person, it might be somebody with disabilities, it might be a child with learning difficulties, adult child, it could be lots of different scenarios. And who is it? It's always women who end up losing their careers and their options in order to care for the older people. So I'm utterly determined and clear that we will do that. There's also an issue which I'd like to hear from your views on, is the way in which older people in society are too often quite lonely and quite isolated. And it's not just about hospital care, it's not just about social care, it's also about opportunities and facilities in life. And so if you close down libraries, close down day centres, close down swimming pools, make leisure centres too expensive for anybody to use, all these kind of things, then it ends up closing down all your options in life. And so we put forward a manifesto in this election which is bold, and I'm very determined to carry it out. Bold because it's saying that we cannot go on underfunding our public services. Another 5 years of this government, goodness knows how many people are going to be on hospital waiting lists and all the rest of it, and how much more is going to be given away in tax to the very rich at the top end. What we're saying is 95% of the people will pay no more in tax under any of our plans, 5% will pay more, and big companies will pay more. And you know what? At the end of it, we get better schools, we don't have head teachers collecting at the school gates, we don't have a hospital waiting list, and we don't have students leaving university with £50,000 worth of debt. That's putting off working class youngsters from going to university. As far as I'm concerned, this is about rebalancing our society a bit. It's not young versus old, it's all of us doing stuff together. And you know what? The support we're getting is absolutely incredible. This election is now 6 weeks into it, 4 days more campaigning to go. It's incredible the number of people that are coming forward, and we have the biggest one day of donations in the Labour Party's history yesterday. And do you know what the average size of the donation was? £19. £19. And that shows hundreds of thousands of people just gave us very small amounts of money because they want something different. I don't know the numbers of any billionaires to phone up and ask for a donation, and I doubt they'd take my call anymore. And I'm proud of that. Yeah. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd just like to start by saying too that I'm really proud to stand on this manifesto. It's an amazing manifesto. It's fully costed, and it will take this country and this city forward in the way that it needs to do. Right, questions. Anybody have a question? Rowan?
Jeremy, can I just say to you that one of the most important things for one of the most important things for elderly people, it might not seem much, is actually the bus pass that allows them to get out of their homes, travel around the country, actually they can do, and have some social life. And there's always rumours that this terrible Conservative government will look at that or reduce funding in some way which will stop people from having their bus passes. Now, all I want to hear from you, and I'm sure you will, is that you will guarantee and ensure that we elderly people keep their bus passes, which allows them to have the sociability that you were talking about earlier.
Absolute guarantee we will keep the bus pass. My own background on this is when I was first elected to Parliament, we had in London something called the Great London Council. It was abolished by Margaret Thatcher's government, and we fought tooth and nail during the abolition process to keep what was then the London bus pass, which was the first of these things introduced, obviously just in London, and that eventually developed into the Freedom Pass, which is for all modes of transport in London. It's a very good one. And the bus passes eventually sporadically came in different parts of the country. Yes, it will absolutely be kept. And secondly, we have, as you well know, plans for investment in the railways and taking the train operating companies back into public ownership when the franchises expire. And that we will do, but I'm also very aware that actually more people a year make bus journeys than train journeys. There's about 1.5 billion passenger journeys a year by train. There's much more than that by bus. And the bus services vary enormously between, in some cities, quite good, in some cities completely deregulated and not very good. Most rural parts of Britain have limited, or in some cases no, bus services whatsoever. And I am very keen that we have a bus system that also operates in rural areas, because if we don't have buses going into villages, then the villages either become the preserve of those that can afford to live there and have cars to get around, or people living in them who don't have access to a car become totally isolated. And so I think an investment via local authorities, and we'd fund local authorities to do it, of a comprehensive bus service across the UK is something I feel very, very strongly about. And so yes on the bus pass, but also yes on investment in rural bus services. But that also has an effect of improving rural economies. So it's not just about agriculture, it's about the development of other work via agriculture. So you don't just grow apples, grow plums, whatever. You turn it into jam, milk turn into cheese, yogurt and so on. You then develop a sort of light manufacturing facility, and you create rural jobs as well. I think that's all important. I'm very keen to do it. I can't promise to do anything about the cold winters in Lincolnshire, but I'm very happy about the bright sun we've got here today.
Yeah, thank you. John?
Jeremy, I think you're absolutely right to talk about the links between the austerity politics of the Tories and the devastating cuts on all aspects of services, and how that affects elderly people, particularly vulnerable, isolated elderly people. But that joined up thinking, which seems to me is so absent from the Tory agenda, is particularly apparent in the case of social care and health care. And, you know, for years people have been talking about we need to have much better integration than we have. We talk about it and nothing actually happens. How do you think Labour in power will make that integration happen?
Okay. On the social care, yes, I've been involved in many of these discussions over a long time, and social care has now become much more acute. I would add into what you're saying also the question of mental health within our society. Badly underfunded, too many people waiting far too long for any kind of support and treatment, and far too much stigma attached to those that have stress levels, particularly for young people who feel unable to talk about it. And so I am appointing a Minister for Mental Health specifically to deal with that crisis. On the social care, we will immediately fund it properly and make it fair across the country. The Tories did a deal with Surrey and didn't do a deal with anywhere else, which I thought was completely wrong. And we only heard about that because they got some text messaging mixed up, and they texted somebody that I know to say this sweetheart deal they're doing with Surrey. Shame that, wouldn't it? You should check your numbers before you send things out. So we'll set up a national care service which will ensure fair funding across the whole country, and as I see it, it's probably better stationed between local government and health rather than solely part of the NHS. That is the general view. I mean, I'm not totally fixed on this, that's my general view, but I want to make sure it is there and available. But also that we don't just look at care homes, we also look at care in the home and support that's given there, because that is often as important. And whilst At the moment, people do get, if they need it, get visits. Those visits are often far too short. They're often from agency workers who may be very good or may not be, but they don't get to know the person, and they just come there one day, do 15 minutes and go. And it's a very private thing, having a carer coming into your home. It's a very private situation, and you need to build a relationship with the person being cared for. And I feel very sorry for care workers and the stress they've put through. I'll give an example. I went to see an old gentleman recently who sadly has passed away now, and he was getting care, and his care worker, a very nice man, was coming in twice a day for 15 minutes. And then he had to go somewhere else, for which he wasn't paid. He was only paid when he got to the next place, and he showed me his plan for the day. It was ludicrous. He was literally running from place to place, 15 minutes, and he was so concerned about the gentleman that I've been to see. He then came back in the evening, unpaid, just to see he was all right. Really decent guy. Yeah, and there are such wonderful, decent, and he was paid what, minimum wage? Yeah. And it's a highly responsible job. And so I want to professionalise the care work, but without, and you'll understand this because we're in the same union, understand this, without taking away what I believe the qualification of experience that comes from a lot of people that have done care work for many years, have no specific qualifications but are brilliant at doing it. So I'm working with all those that work within it, and we would encourage local authorities to run care homes again, or where care homes go out of business, and some are, then I think they should be taken over by local authorities to run them. But we will keep the Care Quality Commission, because I think it's very important to have an independent inspection and independent verification of what goes on, because there's some things happened in care homes which is pretty awful at times, so there has to be an independent form of inspection. Everybody must have an independent place they can go to complain about things. That's part of a democracy.
Can I ask you?
Yeah, sure, you go ahead.
Just following on from that, I'm a nurse, I work at Lincoln County Hospital. Every day in A&E, elderly people, lots of other people, but elderly people come into A&E, they sit for hours on end waiting to see a nurse and a doctor. Then when they do get to a ward, the wards aren't properly staffed, safe staffing levels just you cannot guarantee them at the minute, and nurses are leaving the profession because wages have been cut and there's no bursaries, so you're not going to get new ones training. Can you just tell us a bit about what we're going to do about that with Labour empowerment?
Nurses have had a pay cap for 7 years. All health service workers have had a pay cap for 7 years. There is at the moment insufficient statutory protection of staffing levels within our hospitals, and the government has now taken away the nurse bursary. I met a group of trainee nurses at the university in Worcester. It's a very good school of nursing there, and I met a group of about 15, 20 of them. And they were mixed backgrounds, they were an age range from the mid-20s to the mid-40s. All of them had done other jobs in different ways before. They'd either been in retail, they'd been in care, they'd been in lots of different things, and they wanted to take up nursing. And brilliant, great, and I'm sure they're all going to be good because they had real empathy with people, because they've been around the block a bit, they understood life, which is good. And all of them, I asked them a question, I said, you get the nurse bursary, they're the last cohort that will get the nurse bursary. I said, if you weren't getting the nurse bursary, would you still be doing this course? And only one said they could possibly just about manage it. All the others said, look, I've got children, me and my husband are getting by, we're paying the mortgage, we can just about manage, but we could not afford the fees on top of that. And I said, what would you do if you weren't doing this? She said, well, I'll go back to working in Tesco's. Well, fine, working in Tesco's, good. It's a job, good, well done. But she wanted to be a nurse, and because of the nurse bursary, she can be a nurse. And you know what? We're all going to benefit from that. Take the nurse bursary away. Where are the nurses of tomorrow? There's going to be a most massive crisis in nursing in 10, 15 years' time. We will bring back the nurse bursary straight away so we can recruit people into nursing who have a life experience, and I think will be very good nurses as a result of it. I made that very, very clear.
Interesting. I seriously did work at Tesco's, and I trained.
Wow! Wow, and I didn't even know any of that. So you see, it's the Tesco road to nursing.
I was a single mum. If there hadn't been a bursary, I
You wouldn't have done it, would you?
No,
You wouldn't have done it.
Wouldn't have been a choice. So there you go. Another question, Monica?
Could I go back to social care?
Sure.
And in a home problem. We had an old lady living next door to us until just before Christmas. She died just before Christmas when she was 94. We were very fond of her. And she had carers coming in 6 times a day. We bought the house actually from John and Sue in the centre of the city. And we talked to the carers quite a lot. And there are 2 problems that we know of in relation to that. One is that because they're privatised companies in the main that get their contracts from the National Health, I think I'm right in saying, they triple book the people sometimes, and so they put 3 20-minute slots into an hour, which with, as you said, no time to get from one to the other, and usually they're either walking or cycling. They were working 16 hours a day, quite a lot of these people, and they were nowhere near the minimum wage because they got paid on the amount of time they were actually with the person. So the 20-minute slot got cut down to 10 minutes, or 15 if they were lucky, so they could get from one to the other. And the other problem with it was that I've lost that one. No, sorry. Yeah, okay, that will do then for now.
Absolutely, absolutely my point on that, and I do think we need to have a serious relationship between the carer and the person that's being looked after. I mean, I remember when an aged auntie of mine was getting care before she died, and some of the carers were very good, some of them less so, but they changed roughly once a week. So she got to know somebody a little bit and quite liked them, and she was somebody that she was quite a reserved sort of person that wouldn't readily take to somebody. She'd kind of begin to get their trust a bit. Somebody else. It's ridiculous.
They gave up very quickly because it was so stressful for them, and they were working 16 hours a day.
And the hours they work and the time they get. And so we're looking at improving their conditions so they get paid a wage for all the time they're on duty. Look, if you're a post person, you get paid from when you clock on in the morning until you clock off. You're not removed from pay while you're driving the van from the sorting office to the area you're doing delivery. You know, it's a really quite ridiculous concept. You're working when you're travelling between your appointments, obviously. Why else would you be travelling from A to B?
I've remembered the other
It's only
point.
fair, isn't it?
Yeah, the other point is that the people who are getting the care are very afraid of losing the care that they have, and they daren't say. And in fact, one of our counsellors phoned up with Parker and tried to sort things out for this particular lady, and was told that they were okay because they didn't dare risk losing the care they had, and that's distorted the figures. So just wanted to let you know.
Well, I think here you'll have a brilliant MP who will understand this and be able to speak about it.
I used to organise care packages in the hospital.
That's right. Speak about it in Parliament and be able to develop this National Care Service and its relationship with the NHS.
Vital.
Real qualifications. Tesco Nursing Union. Tesco Nursing Union Parliament. What else is there?
Anybody else got a question?
Yes, go ahead. Hi, Jill.
I was born in 1954.
And I know what you're about to say. Yeah. Where's your sash? Your waspy sash.
I've signed the Waspy pledge.
I wondered if you...
Yes. You're all probably familiar with the way in which the people that were born, women that were born in the 1950s, suddenly had their retirement age raised and therefore lost out very, very badly. I fully support the Waspy Women, fully support the campaign. We will immediately bring in a compensation system for them so they will not lose out, and we will also cap the retirement age at 66 in the future. It won't go up any more than that. And we do think that for some people in very heavy work professions, they should be allowed to retire earlier than that. I think firefighters, for example, ambulance crews, there's a number of people in different professions where it's not reasonable to expect them to work for that long. And so people can work longer than 66. Well, you know my age, so it's, I can't say too much about that. But I do fully accept that I think what we call the WASPI women have been extremely badly treated. And I have to say, it's those women that did so much and created so much in our lives, and they fought such a brilliant campaign. Do you know what? You've won. Well done.
Right, do we have time for more questions?
One or two more, then I've got to move on. I've been sent to all over the place today. Yeah, this gentleman and the lady there, yeah?
Yeah, not a question actually, an observation. Throughout my life I've seen two Prime Ministers, seen them, not spoken to them. Next Friday I'll be able to say I've seen three.
Another quick one?
Sure.
Carol?
Yes, I was just going to talk about the demands of Lincolnshire really, being a large rural county. You've already talked about the bus services, but there's also medical facilities, the way that in a large rural county it's difficult, to command the resources. We haven't got a teaching hospital here, for example, and we've also got a local authority that has cut back so dramatically on libraries and social care and things that really matter to people. And I suppose what I'm interested in is this separation between government and local authorities, and how you could, well, first of all, that we are, because we're a large rural county, we've got particular needs, but also how we can command the resources at a local level when we've got a Conservative dominated county council that's determined to cut costs and to rein back on the very services that people need.
Indeed. Lincolnshire is probably one of the largest counties in terms of area, and therefore obviously resources become necessary. It's quite expensive to deliver services across the whole county, but as far as I'm concerned, everybody deserves to have access to a library, health facilities, NHS and so on. And what we'll do on the NHS, deal with that because in every single part of the country there's a debate going on about which A&E to close, what the distances will be between them, and this happens everywhere. It happens in Cumbria, it happens in Shropshire, it happens in Bedfordshire, and so on, this kind of debate. And so John Ashworth and I have discussed this, and what we'll do is suspend the plans immediately, then work from the basis of access to particularly A&E departments, because if you lose an A&E in a hospital, you then lose the possibility of everything else. You take the A&E away, you can't have elective surgery, you can't have maternity services, you become basically a health centre. And so we'll absolutely determine to deal with that. And also I recognise your point about the lack of teaching hospital and that the problems that go with that. Secondly, on services, we will be funding fairly across the country so that youth work becomes a statutory provision for local authorities, therefore available whether a council thinks it's a priority or not. It will be a requirement on them to do it. And I think that's important. Thirdly, on culture and library facilities, I am very keen that our children should get better facilities in primary schools, and so one of our offers is 2 to 4 year olds getting 30 hours a week of preschool universally available for all of them, which would be a combination of social interaction and play before they go on to primary school. That our primary school children would get a meal every day at lunchtime, and that every school will get what I call a pupil arts premium, ring fence to music, art and culture, so that every child will get to learn a musical instrument, because I think there's creativity in every child, but it also helps them with maths and a lot of other things, and also bringing together a combination of local schools doing music together, and that has a knock-on effect in that money can also be spent in libraries, in theatres, museums and galleries. It's our input to cultural life. We'll also have a national cultural fund which will help support libraries and theatres in particular. So I'm keen to develop all of that. So for large rural areas with low population density, our offer is bus services. Our offer is more money in the school, so the head teachers don't have to go around collecting to try and sustain the school. Our offer is the pupil arts premium. Our offer is development of a rural economy in this country as well as an urban economy, because we have to, as a party, represent all areas, the whole country. I grew up in a rural area. I have some understanding of the love of it, but also the complications of it, and also the levels of poverty that can exist in actually very beautiful villages. Living in a chocolate box-like village doesn't necessarily make you wealthy or prosperous. It means you're living in a nice place, but you've still got to eat, you've still got to get a job. And so that's the kind of thing we're doing. On devolution, we will be inheriting a patchwork of devolution where there's metro mayors in some places, where there are traditional local authority structures in others. We'll be looking at regional devolution after a lot of discussion, starting with the National Investment Bank for each part of the country, so that there will be a fair amount of national infrastructure investment across the whole country. At the moment, East Midlands actually gets the lowest level of central government investment of any English region. It's not fair. It should get a fair amount. Likewise should the North East and North West. And if you don't have that regional thinking around a national investment bank, then inevitably the biggest voices will win out, and you'll get most of the investment in London and the South East, which is what's happening at the moment. So I'm very determined to change all of that. And it does require having voices from counties like Lincolnshire.
Thank you.
Are you going to be that voice?
Absolutely. Richard, you were next.
Hi, Richard. I think we'll have to finish there.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Sorry,
Richard, go on.
yeah, thank you.
I love it. Sure. What is that?
Thank you. It's you know Helen Prejon and the death row. This is the head of Jesus through the keyhole, because he's been involved with death row in the United States. I was going to ask about that. Thank you for saying about ending the involvement of private companies in the rail network. We haven't heard very much about the creeping privatisation in the social care and health services.
Right. I want the NHS to be the employer and the provider, and I don't want any more contracting out of services within the NHS. Because if you're in a hospital and you're part of a team employed by the hospital, you phone up the pharmacy and say, I need some drugs urgently for this patient, and they come. You're ringing up, well, you're ringing up a colleague in the hospital. If you're ringing a company that runs the pharmacy, you're suddenly into a contractual relationship with them. It's different, and their loyalties are different. I want them all employed by the same thing. I want to restore the national, in our national health service, and lift the pay freeze that's gone on, because actually most NHS workers have in reality had a 14% pay cut in the last 7 years. And I think most people in the NHS work well beyond the hours they're paid, incredibly dedicated towards the NHS, and actually it's moral blackmail. They've been exploited. They should be paid properly, so we'll lift the pay cap on it. Yes, all this does cost, and I fully appreciate that, and I think we've been brave. We've put out a manifesto here. I've got a copy to present to you this morning. Shall I read it to you? We've been brave because we've set out exactly what we'll do, but it's all about really saying we cannot go on as a country giving tax breaks and tax relief at the top end and expecting every public service to be cut, every public service worker to work longer hours and harder, and wages to be low, falling or frozen for so many other people. We cannot go on like this. We should invest in the people for the future, and that's our offer. We're not setting one generation against the other, one community against the other, one region against the other. We're saying, let's have a government that looks at things a bit differently, and that is what we are determined to achieve next Thursday. Okay?
for Lincoln.
Yes, please. I'd like to thank you so much for coming. Very, very much looking forward to being part of Jeremy's government on Friday morning.
So you've got, I'll tell you what, in these last 4 or 5 days of the campaign, yeah, we do a lot of campaigning in a very traditional way. We knock on doors and say you're going to vote for us and we record it. We go and remind them to do it on Thursday, and that's very important. But also, you know, you can campaign all the time, but just chat to people. And you get on the bus, just say, what do you think about the NHS? What do you think about social care? What do you think about railways? What do you think of this? Starts the conversation going. And you know what? It's working. Thank you.